Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm Diane Okonski, the president of the Icelandic National League of the United States, and I'm very happy you're able to join us today. Before we get started, I have two reminders for you. First of all, as attendees to the program, you are on mute, but we want to get your questions in anyway, so please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on a phone or a tablet, it may be in the upper right-hand corner, or you might have to swipe to find the button, but don't let that stop you. We will answer as many questions as possible later in the program today. Also, this program is being recorded and will be on the INLUS website in just a few days. So today we are thrilled to have with us Jules Chambers, the host of All Things Iceland, and Erin Johnson, to talk about what it's like to move to Iceland and what they've discovered during their moves and settling in. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And I know this is going to be a fast-moving hour, so I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. Jules and Erin, thank you so much for joining us. And Erin, take it away.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. It's really nice to be able to reach out. I guess can't see everyone right now, but reach out to everyone who's back in the States or wherever you're at and talk about this. So yeah, my name is Erin Johnson. For those of you who don't know me, I was involved in the Icelandic community in Minnesota before moving to Iceland in 2019. I'm a special education teacher by training and work here at an international school right now in Iceland. Yeah. Jules, you want to?
Yeah,
I don't want to spoil too much.
Yeah, and thank you, Diane and Erin, and just for this opportunity to kind of share about different experiences here. So as I mentioned, my name is Jules, and I am was born and raised in New York City, specifically in Brooklyn. And I moved to Iceland in 2016 after falling in love with an Icelander. I feel like that's how a lot of us end up coming over here. It's a very common story in that regard. And I love Iceland. I did not expect to ever move to Iceland, just as FYI. This was not on my brain. It's not in, the circles I run in. People were not like Iceland until, of course, after the eruption, but that's a totally different story. And I enjoyed sharing so much about Iceland that I decided to start a podcast in 2018 called All Things Iceland that also expanded into a YouTube channel. And I've just been on this adventure ever since of sharing and kind of building community around people who are either like myself, who want to move to Iceland or want to visit or just curious. Sometimes a lot of Icelanders even watch, which I find really fascinating because I'm like, what are you going to find out that you don't already know, but you just never know who your audience is. So I'm always appreciative of the opportunity to share because I think the more perspectives about life here really helps to shape Iceland in general, and you get many different perspectives. So thank you again for this opportunity. And I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before I moved to Iceland, I was following your Instagram and YouTube videos, and they were actually I loved the updates and being able to stay connected with Iceland, even though I wasn't there. So
yeah, glad to hear that.
I think that's probably a lot of people's experience as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we started off with the question that you've slightly answered already, but maybe we get a little more history of what brought you to Iceland. It's love, but give us some more details here.
Yeah. I want to say that love was the only thing that really cemented it for me, but there are other factors that came into play. Granted, love being the number one for sure. And just to make this story short, because I think it takes me around 20 minutes to tell the whole story of how Gunnar and I met and then coming to Iceland, then I don't want to take up that chunk of time. But in essence, we met, I believe when I was 20 in university at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in upstate New York. So I met a Icelander who I think was the only Icelander on the campus. So it just so happened that I made friends with this person and he had friends coming to visit. So his name is Orre, and Gunnar was one of my husband or husband to be in the future was one of the people that came to the party. And he was still living in Iceland, but just visiting the US, and, thought it was cute. And we were just kind of like chatting, and it never turned into anything because I'm 20 years old, first of all, like I'm not like looking to be in a long distance relationship with this guy from Iceland that I know nothing about. So meaning like the country or anything. And Facebook became a thing around this time. So we ended up becoming Facebook friends. And he, I see through status updates that he moves to the United States because he's pursuing his degree in psychology and all this other jazz. And at some point around 8.5 years ago, we ended up being together. That's just like, I'll just like, go past all the other things. And that was surprising, to say the least. And I remember him telling me that he plans to move back to Iceland. He was getting his PhD in psychology. And one of his goals was to come back and help the society, because there are not a lot of male psychologists, I think, in general in the world, but also in Iceland, they find there's still this imbalance in terms of having that available. And just psychological services is something, especially when he was going to school, was not very much encouraged. It was, you always thought that if you had a breakdown, then you should go to a psychologist. Not that just going through everyday life, we all need somebody to talk to who's outside of our situation. So I just always admired this and thought to myself, he's a great guy. Iceland must be great. I'll go. I didn't really give it much thought. Love also makes you think like, I'm sure we'll just work it out, right? So it was just a lot of fun, even trying to learn a couple of words before my first visit in 2013. It was a beautiful, overwhelming trip because I was being introduced to his family, this new country, being surrounded by this language. It was December, right? So it was just like, yeah, all
first taste.
Yes, right. And it was amazing. And after coming back 4 or 5 times after that, I really was like, I actually feel at home here. I think I could live here. It's like, sure, why not? And I made one agreement with Gunnar that was really important for me. Was I was working in digital marketing in New York City, and I did not want to just stop my career and start over in a new place. And I know a lot of people do that, and I have nothing against it. I think it's amazing and brave. That just wasn't for me. And I just felt like once I find a job in Iceland, I will diligently look and do my best. I will move. And around 7 months after we ended up getting married, so we were still living long distance from each other, but we decided to get married, that I ended up getting a job in Iceland. And it was just like, whoa, in marketing for a travel company. So I was very lucky that tourism had boomed and they needed people like me. Iceland being so small, it can be hard, specifically in sectors like digital marketing, where it's not like many people, they probably are now going to school for it. But I think a lot more people were doing things in tech or like computer science or whatever else. That's where you were finding more people shifting towards. And there was just a gap there in terms of knowledge. And it probably still is. I'm not completely aware of the landscape now that way, but I ended up coming and working for an outdoor travel company. So not only was I getting the opportunity to work in Iceland, but specifically go on adventures. So they're like, yeah, you need to understand how to market to people who go on glacier walks or who go hiking in the highlands. And I was like, okay, if I have to,
if you really make me.
Yeah. Well, which I'm from New York City, right? So in a way, there was a lot of fear because it's like, I don't know anything about this atmosphere,
sure.
This mountains and the terrain. And it was a lot of course, help from people, thankfully, but also just being out there and realizing how powerful nature is and being exposed to raw nature that wasn't manicured into Central Park or something, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
I feel like, coming from Minnesota, we have an advantage there with the snow and a little bit of the weather that I sometimes forget other people don't have when coming here.
Yeah. And you're also you get much cooler, like much chillier temperatures. Is that right?
Oh, way colder.
Yeah. Yeah. So way that's nice. So you're just like, this is nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, I guess, a big chunk of my story.
Yeah. Cool. So, so you visited one time before moving here?
No. I visited 4 or 5 times. So it was like I visited one time, and then like 4 or 5 times after is when I really started to feel comfortable and realized that I could. Yeah. So I moved in 2016. So I visited first in 2013 and moved in 2016.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard of people who just on site are eat for love. I have a friend who his significant other was like, I'm moving to Iceland. And he's like, great. I'm coming with, I know nothing about it, and here I go. And he's been here for 7 years, so it works out. But I can't imagine. My story is a little different in that I visited here, I think 9 times before I moved. And most of them were extended stays. In 2013, I did what's called the Snorri program. And that was a program that is designed to get people from North America with Icelandic ancestry connected with the family or like ancestors here in Iceland. And that was my second time visiting. And so I got connected with a bunch of distant relatives. They're like, fourth and fifth cousins in the way North Americans talk about it.
Yeah.
I just got connected with them, and I fell in love with Iceland and that whole just feeling of community here, the feeling of like it being home was definitely something I had right away after that trip. I remember the first day I woke up, like back home from that trip. I woke up just crying, like, oh, I'm not here. Like, well, my heart was broken. Yeah. And so I just went back every summer as much as I could as a teacher. And finally it was like, I owe it to myself to try to move.
That's awesome.
And it's a little bit of what brought me here.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I think it's really cool, especially with the ancestral connection. That's just so much deeper and different.
Yeah, it definitely, it felt more, and people are saying like, wow, it's really brave of you to move to another country. Kind of like, I'm like kind of cheated, because I have family. At the point where I was moving, I knew the language pretty well. It was more like moving states versus moving to an entirely different country. Like when I was getting ready to move, I was balancing between Iceland or Sweden, and Sweden would have been a much different step, totally unknown. You mentioned you had learned a little bit of Icelandic before you were first coming. How has that process been going now? How are you with the language?
Yeah, I want to say I'm kind of conversational. I'm at between B1 and B2, which I really, when it comes to these levels, I was not used to talking in like A, B's, and C's. It's just like, I guess you would call it level 2.5 or something, which sounds really low, but really like B2 is considered like intermediate, advanced intermediate. And so
it's only like C1 and C2 that are higher, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think C1 is pretty high, and or pretty advanced, I should say.
Yeah, and I think you can't be C2 without being native. Something
probably.
Like yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And because I took some courses here off and on. So my initial introduction to the language was, I think it was Memrise or something back in the day, where people, they were, you could like, it was a crowdsourced information. People put up like flashcards and stuff. And I didn't know sometimes if this was the right word, and sometimes I would run it by Gunnar, and he's like, "That's really old. Like no one uses that word anymore." And I was like, "What am I learning? And this is just literally just grabbing for something because I'm so desperate to find resources." And I didn't know anything about the language learning community, especially on Facebook. Like I don't know if back then they had these groups as well, but there are a lot more definitely places in terms of like on Facebook at least to find individuals or on social media. But I was just like using some tools to learn colors. And I remember being on the trip and at New Year's Eve dinner and saying like, blauw. Like, and then people were so like, yes, I'm saying blue, right? I was like, I feel like an idiot, but I'll take it. You feel so vulnerable and so young because you're learning something that's so absolutely alien to what you've been taught in terms of language and whatever else. And there's a lot more to it. So since then, I didn't do too much after just my initial colors and numbers until I actually moved. And I think I ended up going to the tin can factory when the first year.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think was a good experience for level 1 because it's just, you're speaking in Icelandic, period. Like that's the whole goal. And they do have structure with the grammar and everything. But the idea is that you're just immersed in speaking the language, and that made me more comfortable. And being in a classroom setting, even though it was after work, was nice. But I ended up feeling like I was going to burn out because I'm at work from like 8 to 5 or 6, and then you're going to class from either 5:30 to 7:30. And you're doing this for at least 3 times a week, and you just don't feel like you have any time to do anything else but maybe sleep, hopefully. So at some point I was getting really to a point of like, I have to do something, I have to change something. So I took a little bit of a break and started to realize that maybe getting a teacher, a personal teacher, might be more of a better route for me, just to go along with my schedule. So overall, and I took a course also in the West Fjords in Isafjordur at the...
I remember watching this. Yeah.
Yeah, the University Center.
University.
That was great. Yeah, I took B1 and B2 there. So I hadn't been in a classroom in a long time, and it was reaffirming that I actually was farther along than I gave myself credit for. That is the I think the huge part of this journey for me has been, I often am doubting if I'm doing okay, because if I feel nervous about saying something, or if I don't remember something, you automatically think like, I can't do this. I don't know this, and I'm not trying to beat myself up, but it's just a natural feeling when something doesn't come automatically. Mm-hmm. And Gunnar and I have done some challenges, like speaking only in Icelandic for the full month, for like a full 30 days. And that was great. And we can do this. And often we go back and forth with just speaking in Icelandic about our days. But it's also so easy to go back into English that I need to like remind myself not to do that, because otherwise you don't progress. And I have thought about going to the university more just to push myself in a different way. So so I think there's like the bachelor's, even though I don't need a bachelor's, but everyone I've talked to who's learned the language and even speaks it decently, they've always said that, I should say, the people who speak it really well that I've met, they usually say that's because they went to the university and it just added this aspect, of course, structure, but like the amount of books you have to read and the exposure to all different types of Icelandic, like in poems and whatever else that maybe you wouldn't, think to do on your own. It really pushes your advancement to quite a high level if you stick with it. And I feel like for me, that's a place where I'm like, you feel like you hit a plateau a little bit and you want to like push past that. So that's something I'm thinking about getting into. Is just the idea of going back to the school when I don't technically need school, you know what I mean? But obviously there's value.
I did that exactly.
Did you? Okay. I'd love to hear about how it was.
The process of moving to Iceland is not easy for Americans if you're not in love and married. So I was looking at, how do I move to Iceland? And one of the ways was get a job, but highly difficult if you're not here. Then the other easy way was to go to university. So as I think I was 30, 31, I had my master's in education. I decided to enroll and do the first year of the bachelor program in Icelandic. And like, as you said, it's definitely, it's intense. It's Icelandic in a way that I had never learned it before. I learned mostly like the tin can factory way, where you're saying, where it's more hands-on and just talking with people. And then when I went to the university was when it was like, okay, this is why I say things this way. This is why it's this, where, when you're talking with Icelanders, no one can ever answer why they're saying these things. I mean, similarly with English, we can't typically answer like, why do we say it? I don't know, just right,
Exactly. It's like, I'm not a teacher in this, so just say it.
But I read my first adult novel in that in that year, and I would say I would never have picked something up, like a book like that, up before. And it has given me so much confidence. I've read so many adult novels in Icelandic since. I don't understand everything, but at least it gave me the courage and tools to start piecing it together. So
that's awesome. Okay.
And it is kind of fun to go back for a year. I don't think I could have done the whole 3 years. It's a 3-year program. And I just did the first year before I found a job. And I was ready to get back into being an educator or full-time worker again.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I've heard so many. So I'm glad that this was also your experience, because the more I hear it, I'm like, okay, Jules, it just to let go of this other part of you that's like, I don't need school. I can do it on my own. It's like it exists for a reason. And also there's great reviews. Right? So what more do you need, really? I mean, time obviously is not always the easiest, but yeah. But overall,
it would be hard with a full, if you were going to do a full-time job, I think that would be hard. It's a lot. Yeah.
So overall, though, I do because we also live in Moso, so Mosfellsbær, which is like a 15-20 minute ride outside of the city. They also expect that you speak Icelandic. So in downtown Reykjavik, it's often when you're going to the coffee shop or whatever else, it might be that the person there doesn't speak Icelandic, or they're so used to people speaking English that they automatically speak to you in English. Whereas in Moso, it's like you go to the grocery store, everyone's like automatically góðan daginn. Like it's nice because you're in this, community, but also there's times where it's like, okay, let me just like rehearse what I want to say. So I don't feel like an idiot.
I've done that so many times, like waiting in line, like sweating. Okay, I'm going to order this. I'm going to rehearse it. I rehearse it and I get up there and it's like, oh no. I know that anxiety.
Universal experience of being like, anxiety just to say something.
Yes.
Yeah. But overall, the really fascinating thing too about learning Icelandic is that there's so many cases, and in English, we don't have this, right? In the evolution of language, things get simpler. So just in terms of Icelandic, like it hasn't really evolved that much. So it is much more complicated, which adds to this frustration of feeling like, well, they're just evolve already. Let's just shoot forward like a couple of centuries so it's easier for me to learn this. Like, why do we have to make it so hard? But at the same time, there's a beauty in this ancient language that I appreciate, and being able to even like watch a show and understand what's happening and enjoying it just gives you a different type of special feeling. Like I watched some talk shows a little bit, and even like Worklife is back, the third season of Trapped. And I've been watching the first 2 seasons because the first one I watched most of it, but I kind of forgot. It's been so long. So I was like, I want to watch it again. And now it's like, I realized like, oh, wow, you don't remember much more. And I'm watching it with like, Icelandic subtitles, and it just makes me feel better about that progress too. So I like that there's different ways to be able to kind of jump into the language.
Yeah. I definitely feel like from when I first was coming to Iceland and I was just proud that I could say góðan daginn and talk to where I'm at now. Like speaking the language, I don't think is necessary at all for moving here, makes you feel so much more part of the community if you have that piece. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if any of you are wondering whether you need to speak Icelandic to move here, I think the answer is no, but is it more comfortable? I would say so.
You definitely feel alone at parties if you don't speak Icelandic because they start out, and I mean, people who are, born and raised speaking Icelandic or who know the language start out in English to be courteous, and also just because they want you to be included, but it's natural for anyone to fall back into their native language. So it's not, it isn't meant to be rude or anything. And I think it can be taken that way by some people because you're feeling self-conscious about it when you're the one who's different. You don't understand, right? So,
like I'm making all of these other people change their language.
Right, yeah, exactly. You feel bad about that too, but you're also like, thank you. I'll take it.
Exactly.
And then when they go into Icelandic, you're like, oh, okay.
Just sit here.
I'll just sit back and watch people speak for a while.
I have been there. Or when you've reached your like Icelandic max where you're like, I've done so well. And suddenly I'm so tired that just nothing I can't understand anything. And you just zone out.
Yes.
And then suddenly there's a question and you're like, oh no, sorry.
Didn't know there'd be a quiz. Please don't ask me. It's like, I'm technically not here right now.
So speaking of kind of like these harder things what would you say the hardest part of moving for you has been?
I think it is actually the language, because so much of my journey has been so positive and so much fun that it almost seems bizarre, right? Because I didn't know what to expect, but I think it's helpful that my mindset is, this is an adventure for me. And granted, I have permanent residence now. So it's not just that it's an adventure. Yeah, thank you. It's
very exciting.
Yeah, it's great because a little bit more freedom in terms of with the permit process with Utlendingastofnun, but in the Directorate of Immigration, sorry. And it's okay. So the weather, maybe that should actually start out because it's so easy. I think now that I've been here for 5.5 years, that I often think to myself, I get Iceland so well, at least to a degree, that nothing seems that challenging. But if I take myself back, right? So back in the days when I first came, especially the first winter, it was definitely challenging getting used to the darkness. And if there's really windy days, like hurricane strength wind, that people were still going about their lives. There's not like, oh, we're just going to stay at home and be cozy and wait for this to die down. They're like, no, this happens all the time. We're going to work. The kids are going to school, and the news will say, like the weather person will say, just make sure you hold your kid's hand so they don't like blow away or something. It's just, and that part has always been so bizarre to me because I remember the first time it happened, and I said to Gunnar, like, this is dangerous. Like, I'm legitimately scared to go outside. He's like, don't worry, you'll be fine. Everyone, and then he's like, well, there was one time where like the glass in the bus was busted open because of the wind, but that doesn't normally happen. And it's like, don't tell me this. Like, this is not the time. This is not the time to like have these anecdotal times where like all of a sudden there was this thing that happened with the bus because of the wind. So I think getting used to you just push forward and having the correct clothing I did not have the correct clothing. I had to, when I went back to the US, definitely change up my whole wardrobe around, especially
all
during
of
winter.
The wool.
Wool and just layering and knowing how to layer and gloves. Like I realized my hands are quite cold all the time. So I needed like 2 pairs of gloves in the wintertime, which is, you do what you need to do, right? But it didn't take away from my experience once I started realizing that, I don't believe in that there's no bad weather, but I do believe that to an extent, when if it's not like a red warning or anything, or even an intense yellow warning, that you can make it through this and you can dress appropriately and be able to enjoy yourself. So in New York, normally when it gets to be that cold, which is like January, February, we're all just inside. Like everyone's trying their best to make excuses as to why they should not be outside. Whereas here, yes, people are cozy, but you'll find people being like, yeah, we're going cross-country skiing and we're going to go do this. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay. I want to do that. Like, I don't want to be the one inside doing nothing. So yeah, that was an interesting challenge. And I guess also getting a routine. So in winter, I have a routine that I go through that helps me to not focus on the darkness because it is quite intense to all of a sudden go from having sunlight for at least 7 or 8 hours a day to only having it for 4, like at the shortest.
I need to hear this because I was just looking with my roommate and we noticed in the last week, our daylight has shortened by an hour. And in the next 10 days, it's shortening by another hour. So I would love these tips.
Yeah.
What is this routine?
I actually made a video about this because it was something that I realized might help other people. And so one of the big things for me is exercise. And it doesn't have to be, and I know you're a climber, so I know that's something that will definitely come in handy just in terms of getting those endorphins that you'll need to just feel happy during this time, as well as I put lights in my windows. So there's this, so it's like they're just stars stars that we got from IKEA. It was totally by coincidence. It was just supposed to be Christmas decorations. But I realized that at night when we have these on, it feels like there's light coming through the window, even though it's pitch black outside. So it gives my brain this idea that it's actually not as dark. It's not that bad. And it's quite nice. So it's just like, oh, okay, this is, I'm tricking I'll figure out whatever I can do to trick my brain. I think skin wise, like my skin gets super dry and that is really hard for me. So finding solutions to keep moisturized. So even just like self-care things like that we maybe don't ordinarily give attention to in winter, they provide this kind of inner, I don't know, like, I don't want to say empowerment, but this is the idea of like, things aren't as bad. And it's not bad, but there is an aspect of darkness that sucks you into feeling like, oh, I just want to sleep. I just want to whatever. Or like, I can't do anything about this. Where in actuality, maybe there is something you could do. Maybe the dryness that you're getting, it's seasonal, and just having something to help you with it makes you feel better about yourself, which then doesn't make you focus on thinking winter is bad.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what some of the other things I said, because I remember going through like this list. I also work on a big project. That's a huge thing for me. And this year, this was not intentional that we would be moving as winter is starting. So like, we're literally ripping out everything from this place and just, getting brand new kitchen and everything. Yeah. So that's a huge thing that's happening right now. But I also have other projects that I'll be working on during the winter that really excite me and that are different and give me a chance to feel like, yes. And so winter is like, yeah, whatever. It can be snowing outside. It can be a blizzard. I don't care. I've got this great thing that it's got my mind working. And I actually started the podcast in terms of preparing for it in winter, in February of 2018. And I launched it in June of 2018. So I feel like big projects really help to push you through. Yeah. It's just a couple of things.
Take your mind off it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And going outside, of course, that's a huge one. Is that especially if there's nice weather, go outside and enjoy it and allow yourself, and don't make it so that you're always inside, because then you'll find that it's easy to get depressed. You're not getting fresh air. You're not being able to appreciate the nature and whatever else. So going for even just a walk, if it's a sunny day, which might be a rarity in that winter, who knows, but it is really nice.
Yeah. I saw on Facebook, there's something going around for putting up your Christmas lights early this year, November 1st. Mm-hmm. So we're almost there.
I'm sorry.
I told my roommate we're definitely doing this.
You're doing it, yeah. I mean, the lights that we have, the stars, they're already there. They're always there. So in summertime, I think we're just a little lazy, so we don't take them down. But we don't actually put them on. But in winter,
Yeah. We decided we're going to go get some more of those Christmas light strands and have them a little brighter this year.
Well, everywhere has like Costco, IKEA. Everybody is so excited for Christmas already.
Definitely. So that was hardest. What about best?
Definitely nature and the people. So the combination, of course, and for different reasons. So the nature part, which just surprised me how vast and varied Iceland is if you travel around the country, and how much I got to learn about myself and how much nature has nourished my soul and physically. When I was hiking a lot more, I haven't been doing it as much recently, but when I was hiking a lot more, there was just this high that you get from, first of all, even if you don't make it to the top, which, I like to, maybe it's just the competitiveness inside of me. But when you do just go up there and you see the view and you're just taking it in, and maybe you're breathing a little bit hard, it of course is physically great for you, but it just gives you this refreshed feeling. And I've never been on a hike and afterwards I was just like, that wasn't worth it. Even when it was really icy, I still was like, oh man, that was kind of scary, but it was fun. so I at least have always, thankfully, it's always been a safe, and I try to put myself in safe situations. So I'm not just out there doing reckless things.
Don't have to call the search and rescue.
No, which it can happen. I feel really bad for the people who this does happen to, and their intentions were not to be reckless. But again, like weather and things like that, it can happen to you. And I just, knock on wood. I did, I don't know if you remember this, I think it was back in March when there was really icy mountains or a really icy day. And there was 4 or 5 search and rescue teams called out in Reykjavik. And I was out hiking that day. And I did, in fact, slip down a piece of rock, which I caught myself, but very easily could have turned into, I tripped and turned my ankle wrong. And so, you could, have every piece there, but one little slip and you could barely see it. And I just went down. So, and hopefully you were okay in terms of later physically.
Yeah, I was totally fine. But if there had not been, a certain rock to catch me at the end, or if I had not fallen exactly how I did, it could have gone wrong. So nature is
the
not
beauty of nature here is there's no guardrail, right? But then again, it's you really need to be careful. And in some places yes, definitely. That's the other thing. Nature is I agree with you. That's a part too, I think, is that you realize you're so small in the world, and that's okay. and you get to, and because Iceland doesn't have a lot of trees, the vastness makes you feel like you're in the land that it just goes on forever. And I love, especially in the winter, driving out and you just see like everything covered in snow. This is winter wonderland. It's really beautiful. So yeah, and people. So I've been fortunate to meet, or I have an Icelandic family that I married into. So they're lovely. I'm so happy about like my mother-in-law and my sister-in-laws. And these are people that really have gotten close bonds to, as well as friends that I've made. So Icelandic friends who are native to the country, born and raised. And then some who even come, like kind of like yourself, who have come to Iceland, meaning like they have a connection. Not many of them, just only met like a couple. And then people of foreign origin. And then we relate in this way that is really nice, because then you realize that you're not alone that way. And there's a group of ladies in particular who are so much fun. Sometimes it's a little bit too much fun. But I'm like, I need a night off. I can't. Like this is too much for me. But it's just fun to know there are people who want to have this fun community and do things together and get dressed up. I love doing stuff like that. So I've been fortunate to have like different groups I can kind of like hop around and make some really good friends from people that I've worked with or just happen to meet due to social circumstances. So those two for sure have been great. I did find the working experience really positive for me here too. And it's different in the United States for sure. And I think that's what was positive, is that it's a lot more laid back.
So much more laid back.
Sometimes a little bit too laid back. Right. But it was just like such a stark difference, because I came in with a New York mindset, just like go, go, go. We have to like, and I remember it was 2016 summer. The summer was decent. And I remember at the outdoor adventure company, people were leaving early, like 3:00 in the afternoon, because the sun was out. And they're like, you should leave. It's great weather. Go home, go hiking, go do something. And I was like, I'm not leaving. First of all, I'm new. I have to prove myself, right? So I'm like sitting there working late, and people are like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with her?
Yeah.
Just like, and they were never saying it to my face like that, but there was just this concern that I was doing too much, because I know it was new, but my mentality was stuck in New York.
Definitely.
I hadn't gotten to this point where I realized that I could chill. Like, it's okay. The work will be there tomorrow. This was not an emergency. We're doing tourism in terms of marketing. Like, it wasn't on the sales phone or anything. So this was a huge adjustment that was very positive for my work-life balance, or like at least something more closer to work-life balance than what I was experiencing when I was in New York.
Definitely. I found that too. Certainly, given at my school, we have your email will be answered within working hours from 8:30 to 4:30 within 24 hours. Whereas, in the States, there were sometimes I would answering emails up until 10 o'clock at night and working way past the hours. And it was just like, that's what you're expected to do almost. I wasn't the only teacher that was there for hours and hours and hours. Yeah. And now, I'll still have those days sometimes where I stay late and get things done. But for the most part, I really stick to my schedule. And that has been really, really nice.
Yeah,
and
you have a life outside of your job.
Yeah. And then to go into the next workday so much more refreshed than if you had been there for 10, 11 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. I picked up the þáttarættast attitude a bit as well. When I was thinking, as I was writing this question, and I'm thinking, what is the best thing? And it's maybe the best and worst, because I used to be, before moving here, I needed to plan everything so far in advance. I had my whole month. I want to know what I'm doing on every single day.
Wow.
And now, one, nobody does that here.
No.
Two, even if they did, you can't do it because of the weather. There's so many things that are weather contingent. I don't know. Maybe we'll go to dinner, but maybe there will be an orange storm and we're all inside. I'm like more non-committal than I've ever been in my life after moving here. I was
very
like,
liberating.
Whoa. A week? In a week? I'm not sure. I don't know what I'm going to be doing.
It's surprising that we showed up today, right? It's just no.
I do remember
Yeah,
when we made the date, I was like, wow, it's like a month in advance. Okay, I'm going to have to know what I'm doing a month from now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we can do this.
I kept reminding my husband, I was like, remember, on this day at this time, he was like, even this morning, he was like, so we have this thing. I was like, no, we don't. I'm busy. Right? It's just like, where are you coming from with this? Because he's thinking like, similarly. It's just like, oh, you're open,
yep.
right? No.
Yep. It's really funny too. My boyfriend is also Icelandic, and he called me at 5:55, even though I told him this morning that at 6 o'clock we're doing this. He had no idea.
Yeah, I definitely, the fact that I was against it at first, meaning at first my idea of it was not correct. I thought it was kind of this lazy, like, it'll work out. I don't have to do anything, which is not the case. It's people work really hard here. They're trying their best. And like you said, there are just things out of your control. There's circumstances out of your control. And that's mostly what it's around, is that it will work out. Something will happen in the end, right? Whatever it will be. And we just make the best of it and we keep going. And it's like, okay, all right. I can do that. So
yeah. I'm looking here. Wow, our time is like flying by. What do we really want?
I was wondering if we could put forward a couple of questions for you guys.
Yeah.
A couple of them have come in. They both kind of go back to the language discussion. And this is from Edward, and he was wondering if you could share the Icelandic language learning resources that you guys have been talking about, or how to find them.
The one place I definitely think is helpful on Facebook is called Practice and Learn Icelandic. It's a group, and they have, not only if you're posting in there, people are super helpful. It's amazing, like how much detail they will give you in terms of information if you have a question about how something's written or just a meaning. But they have files that they've saved there with a ton of resources that you can download and then use for yourself. There's also on Instagram, I can't remember all the names of them, but there are a couple of accounts on Instagram that are really great for learning Icelandic. And then on YouTube, there's like Icelandic for Foreigners, I believe. And similarly with the free resources like Íslenska fyrir alla, like that's in the files of this Facebook group. So I think go to the Facebook group, ask to join that one. There might be another one. I think it's another Learning Icelandic Facebook group, but I can't remember at the moment. Yeah.
There are two. Yeah.
But I feel like I always direct people to those because you're getting a lot for just joining this group. Instead of me trying to list out every possible resource available to you in that group, you then get like a bank of resources.
It's called Icelandic Learners.
Yeah. Okay. So those two, I think, are great.
Yeah. There's thousands of people who are in them.
So enthusiastic and so thorough. Yeah. It's amazing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'd also like to put in a plug for the INLUS. We have a basic Icelandic class that we offer once or twice a year. And this year we are also offering a conversational Icelandic class. So we've got classes on weekly on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then on Sundays we have a practice session. So nice. Keep an eye on the INLUS website and for more information about that. But that is just offered a couple of times a year, whereas obviously the online classes are available all the time. Yeah. So
that's such a good way to keep it. I mean, it is difficult in the States, I found, to try and keep up the language learning. So having those online classes or places where you can go to practice it when you don't get to go to the store and hear it every day, you don't get to listen to the news or radio, then that's a huge benefit.
Definitely. Agreed.
And the second question we have is also from Edward. And if either of you have a literary bent, do either of you read poetry in Icelandic?
I'm not that big of a poetry fan. I shouldn't say that. It sounds horrible. It's not like I don't appreciate it. It's not like something I gravitate towards. But there is. So this is one woman, Meg Matich, maybe. And I know she's translated a lot of Icelandic translated Icelandic to English. in particular. I have to see if there's a resource for that. There might be in that file, the group that I mentioned in their files in terms of poetry, because definitely poetry is something like Shone, for instance, here, like he's a really well-known poet that people enjoy reading. And I don't know though if he's looking for resources to learn Icelandic, if it would be too advanced, because there's so much in poetry in general, whatever language that you're reading it in, that there's these underlying aspects to it, that might be hard to know, or some of the poetry is so old. There's a lot of older poetry, but just personally, I don't have a lot of resources for that. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't either. That is one that I think is pretty difficult, as you mentioned, Jules, just like how the language is used and the rules in which grammar and vocabulary shift within poetry have made it really difficult for me as a non-native speaker to really understand what's going on. I can maybe kind of catch the main ideas, but I think I miss a lot of the reasons why you would read poetry in the first place. I think
it's like unless you're being very direct about what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It is a great goal. I mean, I do know like this woman that talked about her reason for coming to Iceland was to understand the poetry. And so keep that hope alive if something that is something that really motivates you, because you have other people who feel similarly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's all the questions that we have for right now. So before we go, do you have any parting thoughts about other things people should think about before packing their bags?
Bring a raincoat and rain pants.
Yeah, exactly. Layering. I think just if you haven't been to Iceland before, just keeping an open mind, managing expectations. One of the things that's so great about Iceland is it is a really beautiful country, and there's so many amazing people and things to do here, but it's also a normal country like everywhere else, like I feel like sometimes it gets portrayed like this utopia, and there are things that happen in society that are not so great. And then there are things that happen that are awesome, so that's, I think, just nice in a way, because it helps you to realize that Iceland is full of humans. Iceland is full of humans that sometimes make mistakes, obviously. But also, the society, I love the fact that it's very close knit and there's this kind of family feeling to it. So you get a chance to get a little bit of taste of that. Maybe you don't, hang out with the natives as much because you're going to some of the touristy areas, or even like downtown is shifted a lot, but there still are opportunities too. So if that is something that's really of interest to you, like going to the local pools, for instance, I know people are always asking, like, where do you meet Icelanders? Go to the local pool. They hang out there all the time. They bring their kid. The whole family is at the pool chilling. Older people are talking politics. I met a guy earlier today. I was in the store shopping for countertops. It's just some guy comes in. He's like, "You're from YouTube," and I was like, "Yes, okay," because this is not like happened to me all the time or something. But like, he happened to move to Iceland, and so that's why he saw it from London actually. And he was telling me that he went to the local pools, and he was, some Icelanders were in there, so older ones, and they asked him, "Where are you from?" And he said he was from London, and they all started laughing, and he was like, that was weird. But they were laughing because they ended up asking him, like, "So what was Brexit about?" They were just like, they were so curious to get his perspective. And I think in a way, like, they almost became like little kids in a way of being like, let's just see how he reacts to this. Because Icelanders, because they're so small and such a small country, there's so much access and wanting to understand what's happening in the outside world, because it affects them too. So I think you'll really find that a lot of people are up to date on many more topics if you want to talk to them about that and you're open. So allow yourself to be open, go to the local pools, and just strike up a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, even learning a little bit of Icelandic, the basic greetings and things can go a long way. I've had so many people compliment me, my Icelandic, after I've said like, "Gaman að sjá þig," or "nice to meet you." They're like, "Wow, this is amazing." Like, you just get that little in at the beginning. So learning those couple phrases can, help you fit in.
Yes. and travel around the country. Don't just go to the South Coast. That's a huge, like time wise, it's so difficult because people are always saying or asking, how long should I come? I mean, that's up to your budget because obviously Iceland is not that cheap, but there are like Snæfellsjökull or Snæfellsnes, I should say, not just Snæfellsjökull, but that area is a 2.5, 3-hour drive or so. And so you could definitely go there, either spend the night or come back. But there are not as many people that go there, for instance, as to go to the South Coast. South Coast is beautiful. It's amazing, but there's so much more. And every region of the country, including the Highlands, is worth visiting if you can find the time to do so.
Well, and that just leads right into our last question, which is, Jules, what is your favorite place in Iceland?
Oh, that's so hard. But I still, my heart still, a big chunk of it is still in the West Fjords. I love it there. And I spent, like I mentioned, at that course 3 weeks there. But prior to that, I had traveled around the West Fjords. And it's also another place where a lot of people don't go because you have to veer far off the ring road, Road 1. But it's just spectacular. Like the fjords are so deep and gorgeous. And I don't plan on ever being there in the wintertime. I say that and I'll probably find myself there in the wintertime. But so far I've not been in the winter, but summers are amazing. And if I could just encourage people to go to the West Fjords, more often, I think that goal, hopefully is achieved because you'll find that it's spectacular in a way that you weren't expecting.
Well, and we have just one other question that just came in, and this is from Christopher. The last question was from Mallory, who is actually Erin's roommate. But this question is from Christopher. He says, "Hi there. I visited several years ago and fell in love with the place. Moving there would be a dream. I'm a welder and my wife is a social worker. We are quite employable, but it always seems like moving to foreign lands requires having a very large surplus in your bank account or a guarantee of employment. What would it really take at a minimum to relocate to Iceland? What are some of those things that you need to keep in mind?"
It definitely has that. At least to come as a student, you needed to have a certain amount set aside in the bank, and that changes every year, but it's per month, I think, like over $1,000, if not 1,500 per month. If you're doing a 6-month visa, if you're doing a 12-month one, then it's a lot. Going to get a work visa can be very tricky if you don't know the people that you are going to work for. So I was able to get mine because I basically walked into the school and was like, here we go. I'm here. I'm available. I know special education teachers are needed here. What can we do? I don't know from your experience.
Yeah, my experience is a little bit special in that way, but I've heard of many different stories, and I do know, excuse me, there are different paths. Wow, okay. So I made a video about this too, because I do think it's often that people are trying to understand how best you can move to Iceland. So if you want, you could, you look up on YouTube, like how to move to Iceland from all things Iceland. But like you mentioned, the work visa part, what makes it difficult is they have to, or more than likely, look at candidates from the EU, well, first of all, who live here, or EU or Schengen area. So even though Iceland is not part of the EU, there's still a special agreement that they have. So anybody who's a citizen outside of these countries, the wall is kind of up on purpose. It's like they don't have a similar agreement with these other countries, so it doesn't get to be, quid pro quo or anything. That kind of helps each other out. But it doesn't make it impossible. There are people who definitely come, and there's work that's needed. There are people who are coming doing, I think you said welding or something. They might be coming from a country that's part of the EU or Schengen area, though, just as an FYI. But like Erin mentioned, if there is something available and you are able to get in contact with that person, or even use a decent company, like a headhunting company. So before, I tried this when I was first moving to Iceland, did not work out so well for me. And that was mainly because the people who were doing the headhunting, meaning like HR companies and trying to fit individuals, they were just, all they saw was the hassle of like, person from the United States, this is going to be too much work, right? But there's a new company, I think they're specifically in tech though, but this idea of needing foreign workers to come in and do either specialized work or even just help to fill the work that's needed right now, because there's just not enough people in the country for the different things happening, especially buildings. I mean, I think, which is so interesting, is that we need, I think, something like 3,000 new homes or something every year to be built, and that's not happening. So there's like different opportunities. And then when it comes to social work, I don't know much about that, but the language might be one barrier there. So if you don't speak Icelandic and that's something that's absolutely necessary, then you might find a bit of an obstacle, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible, because 15.5% of the nation now are people of foreign origin. So maybe speaking in English to those individuals who need social work, advice or organization would be an asset. So it's hard to say with the landscape changing,
right.
But it doesn't mean it's impossible. It's just kind of reaching out, finding places
Definitely
that you think might be of interest. Yeah. And like Erin, I mean, you said you walked into a school. Sometimes it could be just like that, right? It's just one of those opportunities, or it takes a little bit more time. It took me around 7 months to get a call back, even though I was just, and that was just because they're like, who is this chick from New York City? Like sending a, it was really random. And funny enough, the company that called me back, that's what intrigued them. It was like, what is going on here? Why are you applying for this job? So you just never know what part of you being different than, what's available that intrigues people and gives this, they decide to give you a chance.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think going into knowing you probably are going to have to put in some hard work to get the process rolling, and a lot of front end work. But then, if you can get someone willing to work with you to help with that work permit process, then roll with that for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And Jules, we can find your podcasts and everything if we search all things Iceland.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Erin, thanks so much. Jules, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk about a couple of webinars we've got coming up in the next month. In just 3 weeks, on Tuesday, November 9th, we will have Iceland's ambassador to the U.S., Bergdís Ellertsdóttir, updating us on things she's been active in the last year and a half since she last talked with us. And, her perspectives on all things that have changed. We've had a new election here in the U.S. We've had an election in Iceland. The chair of the Arctic Council has changed, which brings around, new opportunities and new perspectives. And so this is going to be a very entertaining program, very informative program. And again, that will be on Tuesday, November 9th. And then on Monday, November 29th, we will have the Snorri programs as a highlighted topic. We will have, yes, Erin was a Snorri student or a Snorri participant, so she could tell us all about that too. But we will have Paula Hallgrímsdóttir joining us from Iceland, and we will have Jody Armin-Jones and Blair Lockhart joining us. They are the co-directors of the Snorri West program. They will be joining us from the US and Canada, respectively. So that will be a very informational program about for all ages, because there is the Snorri program for younger adults and the Snorri Plus program for those who don't fit into the Snorri age group. And then the Snorri West program that welcomes people from Iceland to the US. So all of those applications are due in the early part of the new year. I believe most of them are in January. So please tune in, and we will have more information about those coming up on our website and in our blogs. So again, thank you so much. And for those who have attended, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your support. Bye-bye, everybody.